You might not realize how much space is booming lately. More rockets are taking off, more satellites are going up there, and more people are getting interested in space, which is amazing. And yet, every now and then, I come across this type of question. Is sending stuff to space really useful? Should we not use all that money for all the other problems we have? What do rockets change in my life, really? And I'm sure 50 or 60 years ago, these were all very fair questions, right? I mean, Americans and Soviets were throwing around billions to send dogs and monkeys in orbit, or launching some elite soldiers to go plant flags on the moon. And there was no immediate benefit for the population at that time. Politically and scientifically, it was beneficial, absolutely, but it just makes sense for the normal worker to ask, how the hell is this going to help me live better? And I'm quite sure that apart from political slogans and patriotic chants, it would have been quite difficult to give a decent answer to that question back then. Like if I had to explain to a factory worker or a farmer in the 60s how much the space program was going to change his kid's life forever, I'm not sure how convincing my answer would be. But lucky for me, today this question is much easier to answer. Space is pretty much everywhere in our lives, even more than you imagine. And you might be thinking, yes, I know, I use GPS all the time. No. Wait, too easy. To explain that a bit better, I have prepared a test for you. If you succeed, congratulations, you're officially a satellites expert. But if you lose, you can thank me in the comments for teaching you something new. So the test goes like this. We're going to follow a random guy, let's call him Sam, during his morning routine. Your job is to catch all the moments where you think Sam has used any form of satellite technology, any form. So it's 7 a.m. and Sam wakes up to get ready for work. Shortly after finishing his morning grooming routine, he throws a quick breakfast on the table and turns on the TV for some background distraction while eating. He just quickly grabs his phone because he's not too sure what the weather is saying, and apparently it's quite cold, so he just grabs a coat. While driving to work, he stops at a red light, turns on the car radio, and quickly checks his phone for a quicker direction to avoid heavy traffic. He parks his car close to work, quickly grabs a coffee from the nearest cafe, pays by card, and runs to reach work before his first meeting starts. Okay, so let's pause here for now and see what you have. If you didn't see 6 satellites floating around during that story, bear with me, I'll explain everything. And I'm quite confident you never heard about the last 2, so you should watch the whole thing. Number 1, television. Satellite TV is one of the big players of the TV industry. Like 35% of this market is actually satellite TV. It's usually cheaper than cable TV, but less reliable when there is bad weather, for example, which is why people tend to use it when there's limited infrastructure around them. So small villages, countries with limited telecoms infrastructure. But after more than 15 years of constant market growth, satellite TV is starting to slowly fall down, mostly because people are turning to streaming services like Netflix and Prime Video and such. Nevertheless, in 2021, in the US, for example, there were more than 74 million paid subscribers to satellite TV services. So there are good chances that Sam was doing the same. Number 2, weather forecast. Okay, so this one is quite easy to understand. You probably wouldn't be surprised if I told you that the first step of weather forecasting, before even the big calculations and the big computers and models and all that, before that, the first step would be gathering the data itself. You have to measure stuff like air pressures, temperatures, clouds distribution, humidity. Many parameters have to be collected on very large areas of the planet constantly before you can start saying if it will rain tomorrow or not. So you can probably guess that the most efficient way to gather all this data on the whole planet and regularly is by satellites coverage. Satellites have this ability to collect vast amounts of data all the time by orbiting the planet and to dispatch the information very quickly before it goes to weather computers and finally to Sam's phone. Number 3, car radio. Okay, so this one is less obvious, but it's also easy to explain. Traditional radio mainly relies on multiple ground antennas dispatched across the country and relaying radio waves to each other until it reaches the users around them. And most of the current radio market is still using that technology. But satellite radio is becoming quite a big part of the radio market as well, around 20% of it. It's a bit more expensive than classic radio, which is essentially free if you just have a radio. But the reason people use it more is because, of course, it has better coverage. You don't need a ground antenna. The satellite sees the whole area clearly. And also, there are no ads, which is why Sam chose it. Number 4, navigation. Obviously, the most well-known and straightforward satellite application today, GPS. everyone has it on their phones, on their PCs, on their cars, on their dogs, ships in the ocean, planes in the sky, even the rockets going to space use satellites to navigate. Whether you want to find your friend's address, try a new fancy restaurant, or just randomly wander around the planet using Google Earth, you have used satellite navigation countless times. So whether we're talking about the American GPS or the Russian, Chinese, European competitors, navigation is purely a space technology. So the concept is a number of different satellites talking to your GPS receiver all at the same time, giving precise position and timing information. This information is then used to calculate precise distances between the user and the satellite, which then is also used to calculate the precise location coordinates of the user. Anyway, I don't want to get too technical in this video, so let's quickly switch to the last 2 instances Sam has used satellite technology without realizing it. Number 5 and 6, time synchronization. Okay, this one was tough. We just talked about GPS and how different satellites were giving you precise positions and helping you calculate your location based on it. But the 4th dimension of GPS technology is time. Time synchronization is vital for navigation satellites, like the GPS satellites, for example. Actually, every one of these satellites has multiple atomic clocks inside it, and their job is to make sure that the data is sent with very precise, very reliable timescales to calculate the positions right. The level of precision of those timescales is so good that it can actually be used as a reference point for many industries. They use the timescales of GPS satellites to synchronize their equipment, basically. One of these industries, for example, is financial services. Remember when we said that Sam paid by card? Well, in order to record every transaction happening all around the world precisely, they use GPS satellite clocks. Another one that people usually don't know about is actually traffic lights. Remember when we said Sam stopped at a red light? Well, basically many big cities want to synchronize the traffic lights they have all across the streets. They want to optimize the red light and green light timings. And in order to do that, they need a reference clock. And the clock they use for that is the clock on the navigation satellites. Even power companies, electricity companies, they use GPS satellites clocks to synchronize the equipment they have in the infrastructure. This way, if a problem happens at a specific time with one equipment, they can quickly cut off the rest of the equipment and isolate the problem. Use cases for this time synchronization thing are wide, really wide. Anyway, I hope you learned a few things at least about how much space is literally everywhere today. I still have many things I want to talk about, but feel free to let me know in the comments if there are specific topics that you want to see a video about. I'll take off now. Stay tuned.